Something very strange is happening at Everton, and after their embarrassing defeat versus Bournemouth, I wanted to do a deep dive on their season to answer the question, how do 11 men collectively mentally collapse in the space of 10 minutes? And what I found shocked me. Before we go to the tactics board to really understand how Everton want to play, I first want to show you some clips, because what if I told you that Sean Dyche was leaving clues as to what was going wrong this entire time?
Does it feel disillusioning to see so many empty seats so long before the end of the game?
It's like reality at this football club. If you're not doing well and you're not winning, that's what happens.
It was that small comment at the end of a post-game interview which sparked my interest as to what was happening at this football club. But then, just 2 weeks later, Sean Dyche said this.
How damaging might this be for you?
You never can tell with all that. We've had enough damage here over the years. So I've been here anyway. The 20 months I've been here, there's been enough. So we've got to make sure that we find our way through it.
It's those small digs at the atmosphere and overall mental hurdles that his team have to overcome consistently that's going to link all the way to the eventual answer to this video. But before we get there, it's crucial that we understand how Everton play on the football pitch. And I'm going to try and change your mind about Sean Dyche ball. See, Sean Dyche applies 3 key principles to his football, and they're not exactly what you think. The first principle is playing to the player's strengths. We all know the stereotype of when we think about Sean Dyche's Burnley side. It's long ball football. It's traditional English, aggressive, physical football that tries to block out teams at the back and get the ball quick and over the top defenses the other way round. But actually, there's method to this madness. See, the ball starts with Jordan Pickford, who has brilliant on-ball qualities. His distribution is incredible, and he is able to play those passes up the pitch to a centre forward in Calvert-Lewin, who's a tall, physical striker that can win aerial duels all over the pitch. So already at either ends of the pitch, we're playing to the player's strengths. Again, the ball would start at Jordan Pickford's feet, and he would usher his team forward so that he can launch that ball into the opposition's half. And usually Everton like to lock onto one side of the pitch, and against Bournemouth specifically, it was this right-hand side. So the ball would be launched usually into the centre forward in Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who had pinned his centre-back here and is trying to push this Bournemouth defence as deep as possible to open up this space just in front of the defence. And Everton, as the ball was launched onto the right-hand side, would shift themselves into this space here, tuck in, and really try and crowd out this area here, so that depending on what happened in this duel here, Everton were alert and could win the second balls in this part of the pitch. And it's when Everton had possession in this part of the pitch that they'd start to utilise the strengths of their wingers. And then when we think of more sophisticated tacticians, we think about them stretching the pitch, making the pitch as big as possible to try and open up gaps in defences. But the exact same principle is being applied by Sean Dyche, and he has 2 incredibly quick and technical wingers on either side. So what he'd do is he'd start Harrison super wide, a really wide position here, and with the battle happening between the centre forward and the ball side centre back here, we're suddenly opening up gaps in this part of the pitch. Or secondly, it would actually be the fullback that would start wide, and again this battle happening between the ball-sided centre-back here, and Harrison could utilise these spaces with his pace and his ability to get into the wide channels here. And when those balls did go into the box, Everton would flood that 6-yard box as much as possible, push up and really try and get as many bodies to win first and second balls in and around the penalty box. So it's these principles that we often apply to a Pep Guardiola or an Arteta, opening up gaps in defence, but utilising the strength of his players, the physicality of a Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the directness of a Harrison able to drive into these areas here, and the battling strengths of the 2 midfielders in Gay and Irugbenham. It's these strengths that the players possess which dictate how Everton play. And does it sort of go in line with the sort of Sean Dyche rulebook of football? Of course, but it's not as simple as kick it long because we kick it long. The second principle is about changing the feel of the game. If you've ever heard Sean Dyche talk tactically, he talks about changing the feel. How can they disrupt the opposition's patterns and defensive rigidity to benefit themselves? And again, the ball will start at Jordan Pickford, and 3 out of the 4 times that ball will be launched into the centre forward here. They'll win the second balls, just like we explained. But the 4th time, when Gana Gueye drops deep into the midfield here to offer a passing option, suddenly Bournemouth are in a bit of a predicament. Do they drop deep like they have been doing to overload this midfield and make sure they win the second balls in this part of the pitch? Or do they follow their man, squeeze higher up the pitch and risk being played over? You're causing predicaments for Bournemouth, and that ball can be played from the goalkeeper to the midfielder and out to the centre-back, and suddenly Bournemouth are having to shift over to this right-hand side. And once that ball arrives at Tarkowski's feet, suddenly we're playing to the strengths of this centre-back who has brilliant passing range, and that ball can be switched to the left-hand side with Ndiaye isolating his fullback, with a big gap opening up as Bournemouth have shifted to the right-hand side. And suddenly, if Ndiaye can win his ball, which he did brilliantly, brilliant 1v1s on this left-hand side, can bring his midfielders, his fullbacks into play. Suddenly, from Bournemouth shifting to the right-hand side, pushing up slightly due to an unexpected ball from Jordan Pickford out to the centre-back, suddenly they now had to shift from one side of the pitch all the way to the other, and the ball travels quicker than a man does, and they can exploit the big gaps on the left-hand side. And that's what changing the feel of the game does. You catch the opposition out, you change how they are getting into the pattern of defending, and suddenly you're creating dangerous opportunities in a completely different part of the pitch. It's the third principle that I struggle to explain, and it's the directness in which Everton want to play. Again, we look at the wingers here, Ndiaye and Harrison, who are 2 incredibly quick, direct wingers looking to attack the space in behind their fullbacks. We look at Calvert-Lewin, a physical monster looking to win his aerial battles and constantly approach in the penalty box looking to score goals. McNeil playing in this second striker role, linking up play in both parts of the pitch. This double pivot in Irugbenum and Gueye. Irugbenum really impressed me versus Bournemouth. Good physicality, knows where the ball and his man are, brilliant body shape constantly, needs to improve in his decision making, and that becomes a theme throughout this team. But what is in common with these 6 players is how direct, how much they want to affect going forward, which changed my opinion on Sean Dyche as a coach in general. All of these 6 players can play with the ball at their feet, certainly to a level that Everton don't feel like they're at the minute. And it was this third principle, their eagerness to attack the box, which I didn't even expect to find. It was that principle that led to the collapse versus Bournemouth. But why? Well, we're going to take a closer look to those 10 minutes, those fatal 10 minutes versus Bournemouth, where they conceded 3 goals, and figure out why was the directness in Everton's play the downfall of them at the weekend. To really understand what happened in those final 10 minutes versus Bournemouth, we need to take a look at this screenshot. And you may have noticed in the 3 principles previously, I never mentioned anything about their defensive work. And that was for a reason. We know that Sean Dyche can coach a defensively rigid team. And in fact, it was that third principle, their directness, their willingness to get into the box and affect the opposition's goal. That was the most surprising principle, and it can be seen in this screenshot. They've just conceded in the latter parts of the game. They should be trying to hold on for their first 3 points of the season, and yet their directness, their positivity, the things that aren't associated with Sean Dyche's team is causing their downfall, because I see 7 players in and around the box looking to score another goal when it simply isn't needed. And then we go to the next screenshot. When Bournemouth do regain possession, suddenly we're not seeing those same players associated with that defensive physical football. Those players aren't making those hard runs back towards their own goal to defend their 3 points. And then, as we know, they go on to concede that second goal. And already Everton are in a nightmare. They should have had 3 points, and now they have 1. And what they need is some defensive discipline. When we look at this third screenshot, seconds before they concede that third and final goal, we see Everton having to sprint back towards their own goal to defend their box as Bournemouth are on a counter-attack. We even look at Jack Harrison, who isn't even sprinting. He's walking back, not helping his fullback. And that is what's wrong with Everton. The directness in their play, their positivity in and around the opposition's penalty box, with these 6 players that can all feel like that they can affect the game with the ball at their feet. Everton are constantly positioning themselves higher and higher up the pitch, which isn't allowing them to do those hard yards backwards. Sean Dyche mentioned in that exact same interview I showed you at the beginning of the video how Everton need to consistently win their sprints, win their duels. But it's the positivity in their attacking play which is almost making it physically impossible for Everton to achieve that goal at the end of the game. What I see on the pitch is an incredible amount of positivity in the opposition's half, but it's leading to a physical decline in their defensive work. But because those positives aren't typically associated with a Sean Dyche team, suddenly it leads to an atmosphere at Goodison Park which only focuses on the negatives. And this is what Sean Dyche talks about in his post-game comments, the damage that's been done here, expecting fans to leave after conceding a few goals. It's because the stereotypes of a Sean Dyche team, the physicality, the defensive work, the clean sheets, if they're not being fulfilled and they're not being shown on the pitch, suddenly fans, media, journalists become blind to the big positives which are happening up the other end. And it creates a toxic triangle between the fans, the football, and the manager. I truly don't think it's all negative at Everton, but those 3 components are not connected, and only when they are connected can winning football thrive once again at Goodison Park. Everton fans are going to be negative. They've been circling the drain for many years now due to the dysfunction in their owners. But when we see the analysis and the coverage of Everton Football Club, notice the blindness to the positives, but the expectation of the stereotypes. So yes, something bad is happening at Everton, but I think a slight culture change, perhaps with the introduction of a new stadium, we could see Sean Dyche and Everton push up higher in the table than anyone could have ever expected.